Hello guys and welcome to Seve Talk, my monthly podcast. I am Séverine Tamborero, professional tennis coach, author, and a creative thinker. On this podcast, we will be talking about life, sports, business, and much more with my very special guests. Join me every month at coachseve.com or on my Facebook page for the second season of Seve Talk. Hello everyone and welcome to the Seve Talk podcast. If you are a parent, a coach, a sport manager, or just interested in the pathway of kids' development, today's podcast is for you. We are talking with a Guinness World Record holder and a Kinetics graduate from UBC in Vancouver, Matt Young. Matt, whom I spoke to recently, is the founder of the Quality Coaching Collective, a collective of smart, experienced, servant leader with complementary skill sets that can support sport activity management strategy from start to finish. He also founded a couple of other sport-related businesses in the past years and is a former college track and field and football athlete. I knew a little bit about Matt, but now I know a lot more. We spoke about many things. Where is sport development today, physical literacy, and how to help creating a working culture together. But first, like with every guest, I started the discussion with my story, which you already know, to let the guest tell his story. So please listen carefully to this conversation, and I will be back at the end of this podcast in 30 minutes with some comments and a final word. Enjoy! So Matt, thank you for doing Seve Talk. It's great I'm in Vancouver, you're from here, and it's great to have you with us. And as we were discussing before starting, as you know, most of my podcast starts with my story. And what is yours? What is it through your pathway that brought you to what you're doing right now?
Well, great question. First of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the platform and admire the work that you've done. So thanks for that. My story begins in a small town in Northern Ontario, actually. And I came through a dysfunctional upbringing where sport really had a positive impact. I was fortunate enough to have an elementary school and a secondary school teacher, particularly, that really believed in me. And even when I didn't believe in myself. So he kept exposing me to and challenging me to up my personal game and believe in myself. And that really was the catalyst for a lot of the things, that confidence, the character development, the social emotional connection that are really kind of missing in the sports scene now, where we just kind of focus on the schedule, the score, and the standings. So I was fortunate enough to have his support, which led to a dual sport university experience in track and field and football at the University of Toronto. And then I ended up finishing up my football playing career and my kinesiology degree at the University of British Columbia, way back. I'm not gonna give the date. It was a long ago. So got out of there and really got into what do I want to do, and it was either educating and trying to emulate that same experience that I had, or the entrepreneurial route. So we saw an opportunity in the personal training space where there was a very low barrier to entry and essentially not a lot of, it was all about the celebrity trainer, not really a lot going back to that consumer. And so we took a lot of the things that we'd learned in our degree and we applied them to our business and started from zero. And we just sold 20 years later and had a fantastic experience, really spanning the globe, helping people with their kind of a personal reinvention through physical challenge, adversity, victory was our mission. And so it was a great opportunity. Through that, got into the sports space and got invited to sit on boards and share some of the experiences and knowledge that we'd gleaned. And a lot to do with physical literacy, which seems to be the new buzzword in British Columbia, Alberta, and Canada. And then was invited to speak on a more international scale in terms of the Norwegian Sport Federations, the United States Olympic Committee, and the Liechtenstein Olympic Committee, and became really another vantage point, another voice of reason, if you will, for what is and isn't happening. I'm not employed by a sport organization, so I have a little bit more freedom to say whatever I want without worrying about a repercussion if people don't like it. I don't care.
Less politics.
Exactly. So, and that's led me to where we are now, which is basically helping organizations onboard their athlete development programs, which is really an exercise in behavior change. I'm not speaking about onboarding in terms of here's your LTAD principle or pathway, now go. I'm talking about how do you engage the different stakeholders, the athlete, the official, the parent, the administration, the coaches, and the educators in that process that then serves the athlete.
So a lot of work to be done, and we're going to come back to where you're at today and your business and how you support and help National Federation and a lot of sports. I think it's important. I want to come back to what you were saying, because it seems like you've seen something 20 years ago that was lacking, that was missing, that we call today physical literacy. That it's in a way kids playing sport and being outside and enjoying, to do things without being having a concept of performance. So my question to you is, from having that 20 years ago and today, do you see there's any improvement in regards of your feeling of there's a need here?
No, in fact, there's a regression. There's absolutely a need to revisit how we're doing things. But there has absolutely been a regression with technology, with two parents working, with all the excuses we can give. But really, it's the values, the mindset, the ideologies of free play, letting your kids go out and explore without, being over top of them. The fundamental movement skills are lacking, which contributes to a decrease in fundamental sports skills. So it really isn't one thing. It's a series and sequence of events for a number of reasons that we need to change or decide, are we going to go this way only and accept those results, or are we going to try to get to a more well-rounded, I hate to use the word holistic, but it is holistic approach in terms of nurturing young men and women in life, not just in sport.
Yeah, exactly. And you're talking about free play, because that's something also that we need to bring back in a lot of conversation with coaches, with parents. But it seems like the definition of free play is also very large. Some people think that because they have kind of a class and no coach, it's okay. What is your sense of what free play should be?
I think free play should be something where the children, anyone actually, is able to engage in exploration of whatever they want at their pace in their setting, without it being scheduled, without it being monitored, without it being synthesized or manufactured. Just going out and exploring, whether it's your neighborhood, the woods, your grass, your lawn, your own movements. How do you move through life and understand the nuances that you need to have when you move through life?
And why do you think, because talking to a lot of different coaches from different sports, why do you think parents have a perception, or even coaches, that because there will be structured play, they will be more focused, they will not lose time? Why do you think that is?
I think one of the things that contributes to that is the dollar value. So if I am paying somebody, then my expectation is that they are constantly learning from the minute they walk in to the minute they leave that environment. I think that has a little bit to do with it. And I think it's also, I think this is what you're getting at, is really awareness and an awareness on the parent side of the benefits of what this is. This is not a coach or an organization deciding to be lazy and or uncommitted. This is in fact, it's the exact opposite. This is a coach who understands the value of these young men and women learning the different skills and nuances, and then honing, that can be brought in to hone their skills and overall skills.
Yeah, that's true. And you were talking earlier about LTAD, that is the long-term athlete development, and all the sports in Canada has been doing theirs in regards of their sport. But I know from your work and where you're bringing all of this to the new challenges coming up, you made some adjustment to it in regards of the long term, in regards of what it represents. What is it that you think we need to get forward to in regards of that change?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, I want to back up, because you said all of the sport organizations in Canada are doing this. They're not doing it. What they've done a good job of, and I know where you're getting, so it's not an indictment on you, it's an indictment on our sport organizations. What we've got is a fairly sound academic framework. that says this is, generally speaking, this is what should and could be happening for age and stage appropriate development of young men and women. So basically, the long-term athlete development framework is an academic construct that just gives people a general guideline of what should be happening at age and stage appropriate times. Now, the issue with that is, and I do believe in that, there's a couple issues. Number one, we're in a society that is very instant gratification based. If you look at what's happening with technology. So if you're going to go into that environment, and especially a sport environment, and say the word long-term, you're going to get some resistance right away. So in my preference is to drop the long-term part of it and focus on athlete development, because that is something that if you're in marketing and you're marketing to parents, they're going to get behind that. It's athlete development. Who cares if it follows the construct of a long-term athlete development plan? You're just going to have an easier time selling it. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, it's not about having that plan. It's about how do we pull people into that plan. And in our sports system, we do a great job of pushing things out. We create the PDF, we create the manual, and we push it out. That's not how we engage. This is an engagement process, and this is a behavior change process. And we've got a lot of the stakeholders that we talked about, which is the athlete, the coach, the official, the parent, that operate and are dealt with in individual silos. There's no connectivity. There's no connective tissue between all of them.
No common goals.
There's no transparency in the process that they can all see. We don't actually invite them into that process. So what we're doing right now is working with organizations to say, hey, this is the operating manual for onboarding this athlete development pathway into your club setting.
And that's where I think you bring a good point. I think, yes, we all know that it takes a long time to build an athlete outside of even the medals and the results. And people seems to lose the steps and going forward on that. So you were talking about your role and what you're doing right now in regards of helping a federation and all those stakeholders. What is it exactly that is your mandate that you want to do moving forward with all those stakeholders?
Well, we would love to see them better connected. So we would love to see a process where at the beginning of the season, we're all on the same page. We're brought together to have a discussion. It is a shared and open discussion. Then we can make the decision, is this the organization or association we want to be a part of, or do we want to go somewhere else? Having that transparency at the beginning of the season, any season, can really set, that's your culture. So really, we're talking about how to build culture. And not a lot of technical directors or executive directors know how to build a culture, or coaches know how to build a culture. It's not because they don't want to, it's because they don't have that experience and or support. So what we want to do is lend that experience and support from 20 years in business and building culture and training people and onboarding people to uphold that culture. We want to help others do that same thing.
That's great. And I think around that, you've been in contact with a lot of federation, a lot of sports in Canada and abroad also. Where do you feel is the most challenging to try to have people come into something that, from my point of view, makes total sense? So where do you think is the biggest challenge?
Well, that's a really good question. I think, I'd like to frame that like this. In our bricks and mortar business, there was 3 levels. There was a franchisor level, there was a general manager, and then there was franchisees. So what was the responsibility of the franchisor? Our responsibility was to get as much promotion and hype and excitement around the business as possible, number 1. And number 2, provide a step-by-step plan for our franchisees to be successful in every single thing that they did. If it was an event, if it was a promotion, if it was on the training floor, we had to provide a step-by-step to make it as easy as possible for them to onboard what we were doing. And the general manager's job was to make sure that the franchisees were in compliance with what our brand standards were. So it's a really simple relationship, and it has 3 parties. When we talk to sport federations, if you look at the United States Sport Federation, generally how it's configured, you have the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, they're the franchisor. Then you have the national governing body, they're the general managers. And then you have the local sport federations. Well, you have the NCAA in there too. And then you have the local sport federations. They are a franchisee. And the idea should be that those 4 kind of main groups, the United States Olympic Committee and Paralympic Committee should be acting as the franchisor, promoting the heck out of the business and providing step-by-step discourse for the franchisees to be successful. And the NGBs should be like the general managers.
Yeah.
If you look at the Canadian sports system, we have, are you ready?
Oh boy.
We have the Canadian Olympic Committee, we have Athletes Canada, we have Sport Canada, we have national sport organizations, we have provincial governing bodies that work with the provincial governments, then we have provincial sport organizations, then we have regional governing bodies that govern the region, and then we have the local sport organizations, and now we have the emergence of academies. So we have 10 times less population in the United States who have 4 primary sport overseers. We have 12 to 13. It is almost impossible for there to be organizational alignment with all of those. And I didn't even mention the Canada Sport Institutes and the Own the Podium and anything like that. There's so many different bodies and entities here, and so many are trying to take a piece and trying to impart justify their existence, but nobody's actually really on the same page, and nobody really knows whose role it is to do what. So at the end of the day, we have the least educated and the most self-interested people operating at the foundation of our sports system with no checks and balances or regulation. And it doesn't take a genius to see you cannot sustain an environment, a growth environment like that.
It's crazy to hear that, because it is a reality. It is a reality that you have to deal with. It is a reality that has a coach that I have to deal with. And I'm pretty sure that the main challenge of all of this is alignment, and trying to align all of these people is like making, not impossible, but very difficult. And the alignment should be around the kids. And that's someone that we forget along the way. From your perspective and what you're trying to achieve, if you had like 3 key things that you would say for that triangle that is on the ground, the coach is the parent, and the kid, for them to be successful, at least in their environment, what would be your recommendation for those 3 stakeholders?
Well, for those 3 stakeholders, first of all, there has to be a shared understanding and alignment of what the expectation is, because I think people have different expectations, and we don't communicate that before, but it becomes an underlying factor. So if it's the parent's expectation that they are paying for their kid to participate in this sport because there's going to be something that's coming out at the end of it, that needs to be quantified and clarified at the outset with the kid. And then we have to ask the kid, is that your expectation? Because a lot of kids take on their parents' expectations subliminally and unsubliminally, because if a kid sees that every time he or she does well, that elicits a specific reaction from their parents, then of course they're going to want to just do that, even though deep down, and that's not going to come out to years later, they didn't really want to do that. They weren't really interested. That wasn't their pathway. It was their parents' dream. It wasn't their dream. It was the parents' dream.
Exactly.
So I think that has to be a conversation that doesn't have to be overwhelming, but just has to be visited often. I don't think we do that. So that's number 1. Number 2, I don't think we as an organization actually ask how we're doing. So if we know what kids want from their sport experience, fun, friends, fair play, friendly competition, to finish the season better than they started, we know that because they've told us that those are their priorities.
Yeah.
Are we asking them how we're doing? Are we asking them continuously, or are we asking at the end of the season, did we deliver as an organization what we said we were going to deliver? There's a big difference between those 2 lines of questions. We know what parents want: safety, opportunity, development, even though they might not know what that means. Competition and fair play, because they've been asked. We know what coaches want. So we don't turn around and ask ourselves, to the point you made earlier, are we asking them how we're doing? Mm-hmm. And when we get back into that hierarchy that is the Canadian sports system, we can see that there's so much time and focus trying to justify what you're doing, you forget who the actual consumer is. Youth sport is a service-based business. Yeah. We are there to provide a service to. So we got to start knowing who the customer is. It's not the coach. It's not the parent. It's not the athlete. It's all the coach, the parent, and the athlete.
I agree, and again, I think it's a challenge because unfortunately, we should direct everything to the kid, the process, and also evaluate and evaluate if we're doing a good job upon that common goal. But don't you think that in today's world, it seems the result is a factor that is dictating if we're doing the right thing or not?
Yeah, absolutely, no question. I mean, the result is saying this was this was a good use of our money because my young Jenny or Johnny got the trophy or won the tournament or whatever the case may be. But now what we're seeing, unfortunately and fortunately, is the collateral damage of that kind of mentality across a lot of sports, across a lot of athletes. You have a lot of athletes standing up and saying, we don't want to have our bodies used as a commodity. We are people, and this should have been the best experience of our lives at the highest levels of sport, and it wasn't. Because it was very clear that it was about serving you and your organization and your resume as a coach and what about me? And that's the reality that we're in, good, bad, or indifferent. I think it's a great time to have this awakening, and we're seeing it in hockey, in the NHL, the players speaking out. We're seeing a migration away from the old school type of coaching and ideology, and I think that's a good thing because we're not in 2015, 2095, whatever, so we can stop using the back in the day this was the, who cares, we're not in
when
that
I
day.
Was a coach 20 years ago.
Exactly.
No, and again, that's a bit where we have to deal with a reality of the old way, if we may say, and the new way. And that new way for you is moving towards what? Towards what you mentioned in regards of goal setting, in regards of alignment. From your experience and your perspective, where do you want to see sport, let's say Canadian sport or sports in general? Because by traveling a lot, I think the challenges that we have in Canada, it seems to be a challenge that is universal.
Globally.
And global, exactly. Where do you want to see sport moving forward to in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, if we could wave a magic wand, we would love to see parents being models for their kids at home and being active themselves and being out on the weekends and doing things outside of the devices and the 320 channels that we've got. That would be a great start. I would love to see, and we would love to see sport back into the school system. When team sports were a part of that school and community fabric, that was when we were doing really well as communities and connecting, which is the point of a community, is to bring people together. So when we take sport out of the school system, both at the elementary and secondary school level, we risk pulling apart that community and getting the bifurcation of physical education, meaning you can only have phys ed if you can afford to pay for this academy or after school basketball or football or hockey academy where you're going to get that. We need to see physical education being brought back to the fold. We talk about it, we talk a big game, but we're succumbing to the reality that in the Canadian education system, it's about the dollars and it's about big business. And although we say we care about the holistic development of people, we're demonstrating the exact opposite. You got to get the grades. You cannot get into university if you do not have a 95% average. Well, how is that inclusive, fair, or proper to young men and women who may be in 10 4 to 6 sports during the year? Take away sports, music. Like, we have to have the full well-rounded. So I'm walking up the pyramid here. So starting at free play and parents modeling in the household, not marginalizing physical education in the school, making sure that the team sports are brought back to the secondary school level, and then once we get into the other sports, really focusing on the process, and what gets measured becomes what matters. And what do we measure really well? The standings, the score, and the schedule. So that becomes our benchmark of development. That is not development.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's where we need to change also from the developing, and it seems that development is a process that it's 2 years when it's about a 10-15-year process. I have some people that will listen to us and go, yeah, but I'm not into sport. Talking about you a few times, I think what's interesting is you're able to bring all those perspectives back into everyday life, because you do work with people that want to achieve a success, but it has nothing to do with sport. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's address that this way. You know, when we got into our business, we said there are 5 primary, spheres of your life, if you will: physical, emotional, spiritual, social, and intellectual. We all know that when we're not in the physical shape we want to be in, or condition that we want to be in, we know that it reflects on the rest. Socially, we're a little bit more introverted. We don't want to go out. We don't want to wear a bathing suit. Intellectually, we're doing we're at work for 11 hours, but we're really only getting 7 hours of productivity. Emotionally, we're down, we're comfort food or whatever, we're withdrawing. Spiritually, it becomes a slog. What are we believing in? What's our anchor? So that's not something we created. That's known and been studied for years. So, what we did in our personal training business is really focused and dialed in on the physical sphere and helping people believe that they could do anything in the physical sphere that they wanted. And what we saw is, sure, we would address and bake in some of the social, spiritual, emotional opportunities into our offering. But what we would see is if you invest there, it's going to manifest itself everywhere else. So, 6 months down the road, if you're following a regime and you're dedicated and you're disciplined, you notice some changes. So we would notice people had their haircut after a month, without fail, and they come in, they have a new pep in their step. They're doing 11 hours of work in 8 hours instead of the reverse. They're out there, they're social, they're trying on new clothes. This is nothing that's not known. And I think it's the exact same thing when you get into the sports space. If you have a range of things, look at how many young men and women make it to that elite level. Let's just get to that right now. It's less than 5%. Less than 5%. So that means 95%.
Not a lot.
Of all young men and women who start off in sport are not going to, don't need to have that professional sport experience. It's just not going to happen. So instead for them, it becomes their social conduit to meet new friends. It becomes their stress relief. It becomes their opportunity to be away from their parents and go on field trips and tournaments. That's what you remember. And, for coaches, what coach do you remember? The one that drilled you into the ground and took 0.75 milliseconds off your 100-meter time, or the one that really stepped up and believed in you and inspired you to work through some tough times? Like, we have to ask ourselves these questions, and we'll keep reining it in. The people of those 5% that are going to get to that elite level, the best thing we can do is actually get out of their way. Because
That's true.
It is innate. We're sitting here in the Grant Connell Tennis Center. I know Grant Connell. Grant Connell took the tennis ball when he was a young boy and hit it off the wall repeatedly after school until the lights went down on his own accord, and had games with himself. That was self-driven. And genetically, he's an athlete. He's a specimen. So the genetic predisposition plus the internal drive, that's really what constitutes an elite athlete and pathway. It's very small percentage on the environment, coaching, and all that other stuff. So it's just about the perspective.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And like you're saying, I think life and sport goes together. I think it's no separation. And again, what you're saying is important is that everything comes in with the work that we're willing to give also. It's not going to come out of nowhere. You're going to wake up a morning and you're going to be healthy and you're going to be able to sprint 100 meter under 10 seconds. Everything needs work, that it's either life or it's either sport. And so talking about that, again, in regards of your company, what you've built, what you want to do in regards of helping all the things that we've been discussing since the beginning. What is the name of the company? Where are you going? What are you trying to aim in the next next few years and next few months for you, because you have different projects coming on?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we've aggregated it and put our shingle in. We call ourselves the Quality Coaching Collective. What we've done is through our travels, we've met a lot of people and really remain connected to the ones that we view are servant leaders. And by servant leaders, we mean they want to advance sport for the right reasons, not for their own personal gain, not to put the flag in the mountain and say, we did it. They want it because they want to do the right thing. So we've aggregated expertise in the elementary school setting, from the secondary school setting, from coaching, from governance to not-for-profits. And we've invited everyone to come together and said, if anyone wants help or support in their organization, we can do that. So we span a wide range of skill sets for sport, both at the amateur, semi-professional, and professional level. And our goal is to take one organization who's ready, willing, and able, and affect positive change over a specific period of time. So that was our goal. Lofty, tough to bring people together. Who are you guys? We've got a lot of really bright and tenured men and women from all different walks of life, which is really unique. And, we're working together to try to make sport better with whoever's ready. And, so how's it going? Well, it's been challenging in our own country and in our own communities, as you know very
Yes.
well. The expert is the guy or gal from out of town with the fancy slideshows and accent, usually. So we're having it's been a slow adopt here, and but now we're going. So we've got an opportunity with some NSOs. We're starting to work with some provincial sport organizations from not just BC but different provinces, and most exciting is a professional sport organization that we are going to hopefully be signing a contract in the next 30 days to help them onboard their athlete and coach development pathways.
And I love what you're saying is that you have to be ready, because again, it takes work. It takes the willingness to change. I feel that in sport today, as I'm pretty sure you see also, we love to stay in our comfort zone into what we know, and the unknown, we don't want to go there too much and make decisions that are not easy. So if we do have some listeners that are willing to make those changes, where can they reach you?
Oh, they can reach us at info@qcoachingcollective.com. So info@qcoachingcollective.com.
So before we leave, again, amazing information, great discussion. I'm pretty sure we're going to have others discussion like that. That's something that is close to me, music, and I feel that any athletes that I met or anybody that is in sport, music has been a place somewhere or in time or experience. If you would have to choose a song that either represents you or a time of your pathway into where you are today, which song would you select or you would choose?
Tricky, and thank you for giving me advance notice. I had to look up who it was because I knew the song and I didn't know it's The Great Escape by Patrick Watson.
Wow.
Yeah, so that song reminds me of when things are getting way too complicated. Just playing that song, it's a nice melody. You can just listen to it in your car on the way home and just sit and relax, and it kind of brings you back down. And the message is a great message.
That's great. Look, Matt, thank you for your time. Again, I wish you a lot of great success in months and years to come. And again, I'm sure we're going to touch base again, but I think the philosophy that you have and where you want to bring this, I think everything is based and back to what the passion of trying to make changes, and hopefully people will follow into your pathway. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
I did not want to stop this conversation. Amazing knowledge, Matt. So much to discuss still. On the next podcast, we will talk about the triad, parent, coach, and athlete, that I call the triangle of success. So stay tuned. You can follow Matt on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, or visit his business website at qcoachingcollective.com. I hope you enjoyed this month's podcast and that you downloaded the Stingray Music app where you can listen to the Seve Talk playlist. Go to coachseve.com in the media section and share your experience, your questions, and comments. Thank you guys for listening and being part of the Seve Talk community again this year. Until next time, Seve's out.